Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. Michael Darcy, your host here as always. And today I wanted to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs' first loss of the season. They dropped the NFL home opener to the Detroit Lions last night at Arrowhead Stadium by a final score of 21-20. It was not a very pretty game. I've seen better. We're going to talk about it over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes. I am a little bit under the weather, but unlike the Chiefs wide receivers, I'm not going to drop the ball. So why don't we talk about the thing that everybody wants to talk about, and that was the offense. The Kansas City Chiefs offense was absolutely putrid last night. They were not good. They only scored 2 touchdowns. The other 6 points came from field goals, but the offense was just not clicking. You could kind of just tell that without Travis Kelce, who was a game-time decision, and I actually, since I was at the game, I had the luxury of watching Travis Kelce and all the other players come in. You could tell by the way that Travis Kelce was walking that he was not going to play in this game. I think he was already ruled out, but he was limping and still not putting a ton of pressure on that knee. So I'm kind of worried about the state of his health status next week, but we'll talk about that later on. But without Travis Kelce, this offense stalled, and quite honestly, they were bad. But one area that I wanted to talk about quickly, Patrick Mahomes wasn't god-awful last night, but he didn't have a very good completion percentage. And part of that is because his wide receivers couldn't catch the freaking ball. But I was also watching the game, and I could kind of just tell that something wasn't right with Patrick Mahomes. He was missing receivers. He was throwing it a little bit low, even wide open wide receivers. There was a couple times last night where he missed the easy guy, and we're not used to seeing that. And that's why I think that a lot of the offensive miscues last night can be written off as a fluke because they were very fluky. But Patrick Mahomes was 21 of 39 for 226 and 2 touchdowns. He had a 53.8 completion percentage. That's not good enough. That's not going to cut it. And I'm not blaming this game on Patrick Mahomes. That's not going to happen. But when you're as great as Patrick Mahomes is and you get all the praise and credit for winning games, you also have to take some of the blame when you lose the games. But again, I'm not blaming Patrick Mahomes for this loss. I'm blaming the guys that Patrick Mahomes was throwing the ball to, and specifically Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney was a liability last night. He had 3 catches that he just plain dropped. One of them resulted in a pick 6 from Brian Branch, and that's the difference in the game. If Kadarius Toney catches that ball, you don't have that 6-7 points, you win this game. And that's tough. But also, going into the fourth quarter, the Chiefs offense had the ball with 2 minutes left, driving. They had a chance to go down the field and score and take the lead. Probably would have won the game if they could. And Kadarius Toney dropped a wide open ball. Nobody was around him. He just dropped the ball. And that was the final drop of 3 drops on the night. Not a very good showing from Kadarius Toney. And I know a lot of Chiefs fans are freaking out. They think the world is over. Kadarius Toney had a historically bad game last night, but I don't think that's the player that Kadarius Toney is. I think we're just going to have to be patient with all these wide receivers. It's a very young group, but we saw drops and miscues everywhere. On that 4th and 25, which ultimately ended up being the final play the Chiefs ran on offense, Patrick Mahomes somehow evaded pressure and threw a good ball to Sky Moore, and Sky Moore just dropped the football. Drops were the biggest problem last night, and I'm coming out of this game feeling like the Lions didn't really beat us. We beat ourselves. When you can't catch the football, you're not going to have a very good chance to win football games. So it's just that plain and simple, but I want to stress that I don't think the miscues from the wide receivers is going to continue on, at least at that level. There's going to be some growing pains, but they were really bad last night. They could not catch the football. But as bad as the wide receivers were last night, and I'm looking at the receiving stats right now, Marquez Valdes-Scantling was your leading wide receiver with 2 catches for 48. Justin Watson had 2 catches for 45. Noah Gray had 3 receptions for 31. And you're getting down to your wide receivers like Rashee Rice, 3 catches for 5 yards. 3 catches for 29 yards. But if you get down to like Kadarius Toney was targeted 5 times, had 1 catch for 1 yard. That's not going to do it from your number 1 wide receiver. And as bad as the wide receivers were, the running backs were not any better. Patrick Mahomes was your leading rusher last night. He had, that one big run. He had 45 yards rushing, and Isaiah Pacheco had 23 yards. 23 yards rushing. That's not good enough, and especially when you're getting 8 carries. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 6 carries for 22. Isaiah Pacheco was averaging 2.9 yards per carry, and Clyde was averaging 3.7. Granted, the Clyde sample size was pretty small, but your running backs did not help you last night. And there's a play that comes to mind in the fourth quarter when the Chiefs offense was driving. It was 3rd and short, and they did a jet sweep, or not a jet sweep, a reverse with Rashee Rice, who got stuffed at the line of scrimmage, and the Chiefs had to punt the ball. At that point in time, I was almost like, this game's over, just because they got too cute on 3rd down, and it's just, when are we going to see this offensive play calling in short yardage situations get better? I'm tired of seeing it being so piss poor. It's really bad. It's so obvious what they're going to do, because they're not going to QB sneak it with Patrick Mahomes. It's either going to be an end around with a wide receiver, or Blake Bell is going to get under center and try to somehow find his way across the first down line. Like, I just think that the creativity in short yardage situations is just not there, and it's killing this team. But the real moment when the Chiefs lost this game was when Kadarius Toney dropped that wide open pass when the Chiefs were driving with like 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. When he dropped that pass, I think it was first down, but I still had that feeling like, oh, they're not going to do anything on this offensive drive. I think on the very next play, Sky dropped the ball, and then Sky dropped another ball. Like, the wide receivers are really the reason why you lost this game. But I think that if you can kind of forgive them, so to speak, for this performance, I think they're going to get better. I think they have to get better, because if you're dropping balls like that, I mean, they might as well just sign guys off the street, because they're going to do a better job at catching the football than the guys did last night. But I also kind of want to stress that while the wide receivers were really bad last night, the entire offense as a whole wasn't good last night. You couldn't run the ball. Patrick Mahomes wasn't really hitting the guys that were open, and the times that he did, they dropped the ball. So the offense as a whole just missed Travis Kelce dearly, and I think that's a good thing, because now you know that you're not good enough without Travis Kelce, because the Chiefs, in my mind, rely way too much on Travis Kelce, just because, he's getting up there in age, and eventually these injuries are going to pile up, and you're going to have to play games without him, and you can't have him on the field. And that is a sample size of what this offense is going to look like without Travis Kelce. And I'm glad they found this out in week 1 rather than in the playoffs. But again, I think the offense is the main reason to blame. Even with Travis Kelce, they probably wouldn't have won this game. But I guess I can't even say that, because you were out 2 of your 3 star players. Chris Jones, Travis Kelce didn't play in this game. And we're going to talk about Chris Jones, because I might blow up on this video, because I'm not very happy with Chris Jones right now. But transitioning to the defense, I think the defense played well. I think the defense handled a Detroit Lions offense that was top 3 in the NFL last year, only gave up 14 points. The 21 they scored, that other touchdown, was from the pick 6. So if that doesn't happen, you give up 14 points at home against a top 3 offense. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. But I think the defense, it's hard to say that they're really, really good, because I also want to not take away the credit from the Lions, but it was week 1 and both offenses didn't look very good. So I'm not sure if that means that our defense is good or the Lions offense just was really rusty. So that's kind of why I'm holding out hope. They were really only able to get 1 sack. It was Mike Dana, but Spags got creative with the blitz packages. I can't appreciate that. They're able to force some pressure. It just didn't result in a ton of sacks. And they definitely miss Chris Jones. Chris Jones is your interior presence that opens up the entire defense. And without that guy, you're obviously going to struggle. Now, let me go on my Chris Jones rant. Chris Jones has stated all offseason long that he's not happy with the current contract that he's under and he wants to get paid. I understand. That's how life works. Sometimes guys are more valuable than the contract that they are either working under or playing under or whatever. Chris Jones is that guy. He's worth a lot more money. He wants to get that money. And I'm very pro Chris Jones. I believe that he should get paid what he's rightfully deserved. But something about Chris Jones showing up to the game last night, buying and sitting in a suite in between his two agents rubbed me the wrong way. I really did not like that. Something about Chris Jones watching his brothers, his teammates, play without him kind of infuriates me, because I'm just thinking, if I was on the team and, you're fighting for your life in the trenches, and the guy that's your leader, your defensive leader, who's been preaching the importance of, sticking together, he's sitting up in the box with his agents trying to make and send a message. That's what last night showed me. Chris Jones was trying to send a message. And in my opinion, the message could have been sent not at the stadium. You don't show up, Chris Jones. If you're not going to play, you don't show up in street clothes. You're not going to be on the sideline. You're not going to be in a suite. I think he should have stayed home. I really do. I think that he should get paid. I've been on that train all along. But something about him going to the game, sitting in the suite, really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't like that. I think it was a publicity stunt. It was to say, look at me. I'm here. I'm sitting with my agents. We're waiting to get paid. I'm ready to play. All this stuff. I don't like that he made that message and made that statement, watching his guys not struggle, but not be the same without him. It did not sit well with me. I'm not a very big Chris Jones fan right now, and I hope that, this whole thing gets sorted out. But I also think that Chiefs fans, we have to have the mentality that Chris Jones is not on this football team. Chris Jones is a free agent. He's a free agent until he gets signed. He's not on this squad. And it sucks. It's not fun. But guess what? That's the decision that he has made, and he better stick to it. I think if he comes back in week 8, which is the reported time that he would consider coming back, I don't think he should play in week 8. You might have to let him sit for a while. You don't get to come back and play immediately when you do this stuff, especially if he comes to all the other games. Not a good look. Not a good look. So definitely let me know down in the comments what you guys think of the Chris Jones situation. Maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion, but something about seeing him sitting between his agents in the suite last night pissed me off beyond belief. But getting back to the defense, I think the defense did okay, but I'm going to be very interested to see what this defense can do against Jacksonville next week. It's a much better test. And also, after having, a week under their belt, we'll have a better idea of where the defense currently is. It's going to take some time for the defense to get, in mid-season form. It always does with the Spags defense. But overall last night, I thought they were pretty good. I know Nick Bolton mentioned in a post-game presser they had some missed tackles. That's par for the course for week 1. Both teams had missed tackles. That's to be expected. I will say, Nick Bolton is a dog. Nick Bolton, listen, I hit the weights all offseason long too. Nick Bolton's been hitting the weights all year long. Like, he threw Penny Sewell to the ground, and he was making big tackles all night long. So Nick Bolton, he had a really good game last night, and that's great to see. And I think that he's starting to become that leader and that anchor that we need right now. Without Chris Jones, somebody needs to step up, and Nick Bolton being that guy, I'm very happy about that. But, let's transition back into the offense. I want to talk about that before we get out of here. I'm not very happy with the offensive execution, obviously. Part of it, I think, is them trying to get too cute in short yardage situations, which I've mentioned before. Just run it up the gut. Don't get cute. Let Patrick Mahomes QB sneak it. Andy get over it. It happened 5 years ago. But I do think that these offensive miscues will not continue in week 2. The Chiefs have a really, really bad habit of losing games that they shouldn't lose and then coming out the following week and beating the brakes off of whoever they face. I remember last year, they lost to the Indianapolis Colts, a game that had everybody confused and puzzled. Like, how did you lose that game? And then the next week, they beat the 49ers by a lot. I'm not saying they're going to beat Jacksonville by a lot because they are a very good team, but I'm also saying that I expect them to come out with a much higher intensity, so to speak, than they did in this game. And I think that, another week of practice, getting these receivers back, because with Kadarius Toney and the other wide receivers, right now their confidence is at an all-time low. They're going to have to gain that confidence back, and hopefully they can do that throughout the week of practice, but it also could take until the game time to get ready. So I'm going to be looking forward to watching that Jacksonville game, seeing what this team can do both on offense and on defense. But I do think that we're not going to see these same, high drop rates and the incompletions that we saw in the first game. So I do think if they can clear those things up, you're going to have a much better chance to beat Jacksonville. Just catch the football. Do the simple stuff. If you can do the simple stuff, we know the Chiefs are a great team. They're the defending and reigning Super Bowl champions. They literally are built to win games. So do the simple stuff, the small stuff, and you'll be fine. I'm not really worried. I think it was a fluke. It was a one-off game. It sucks to lose in the home opener. It really does. But, starting the season 0-1 is better than missing the playoffs altogether. And I would rather lose week 1 and go on a nice little winning streak than coast and then you fall and then you just can't pick yourself back up. So Chiefs got punched in the mouth right away. They lose this game at Arrowhead Stadium by a final score of 21-20. The Chiefs are going to drop a game this year that you were just kind of confused as to why they did it. Hopefully this is that game, but I'm not really stressed about it. I think that they'll fix things next week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So again, the Kansas City Chiefs dropped the NFL home opener to the Detroit Lions by a final score of 21-20 on the same night that they dropped the Super Bowl banner. But as somebody who was in the stadium and witnessed the banner dropping while standing on the field, it was such a surreal moment. And yeah, they did lose the game, but that's going to be a moment that I cherish. And I'm sure that everybody else who's in the stadium or even watching on TV is going to cherish for a long time. So I've been your host, Michael Darcy. Thank you for listening to this Kansas City Chiefs postgame show. I'll see you guys next time.